WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is making a final bid against his extradition from the UK to the US in the High Court in London. Assange, who is not appearing in court because of illness, has been in a UK prison since 2019. He is wanted by the US for disclosing secret military files in 2010 and in 2011. His legal team set out their first arguments for an appeal to go ahead. Just a while ago, WikiLeaks editor Christine Rafston, told the crowd outside the court he did not have much faith in the court system in the UK. Former US Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs says Assange is someone who is not in a position to say people did not come to harm from the leaks. Last week, Australian Labor government voted to urge the US and the UK to allow Assange to return to Australia. A motion has little impact besides a symbolic show of support for the Australian national, but is indicative of recently renewed diplomatic efforts for Assange's freedom. Here in Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, UN peacekeepers are deeply concerned by the renewed escalation of hostilities in the eastern region. That's according to UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric, who's been addressing reporters in New York. A UN mission in the country says it continues to support the Congolese army by defending major routes leading to the key towns of Sake and Goma in North Kivu province.
Our peacekeeping colleagues tell us that in the DRC, they remain deeply concerned by the renewed escalation of hostilities in the eastern part of the country. They reiterate their call for the M23 group to cease its offensive and to respect the Rwanda roadmap. Meanwhile, the UN mission continues to support the Congolese army by defending major routes leading to key towns of Sake and Goma in North Kivu province. Due to the deteriorating security situation around Sake and Goma, the mission is reinforcing its presence there by bringing in peacekeepers from its Force Intervention Brigade that's based in Beni in the northern part of the province. The mission also met with the coordinator of the Armed Forces of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in North Kivu. That took place over the weekend, and that was to coordinate joint military action in the defense of both Sake and Goma. It's also expressed concern over recent disinformation campaigns targeting peacekeepers, which is hampering the peacekeepers' ability to implement their mandate. Peacekeepers are continuing to facilitate safe passage of civilians fleeing the fighting to more secure areas, including around the Kichanga base, which some 25,000 men, women, and children have sought shelter with the UN.
In an almost related development, the United States has accused Rwanda of backing the M23 rebel group in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, prompting a backlash from Kigali. The U.S. State Department condemned the worsening violence and called on M23 to cease hostilities immediately and withdraw from its current positions around Sake and Goma. It also called on Rwanda to immediately withdraw all of its military personnel from the DRC and remove its surface-to-air missile systems. These comments have provoked a backlash from Kigali, with the Foreign Affairs Ministry saying the U.S. statement distorts the reality and that Rwanda reserves a right to self-defense against the DRC's actions in the area, which it claims threatened Rwandan security. It comes amidst an escalation of violence in eastern DRC in recent weeks, clashes between the M23 rebels, armed forces, and self-defense groups that support them. Hundreds of thousands have been forced to flee, many of them now in Goma, as M23 advances on the city. Now, earlier, my colleague Layo Adegoke discussed the situation with security expert David Otto.
This has been a historical area where conflict has ravaged, especially the eastern part of Congo, the Ituri province. You've got also the Goma and the northern part of Kivu, where rebel groups, including the likes of M23, the likes of the FLRDR, but also groups like Codeco, the Corporation for the Development of the Congo, they've often operated, either attacking each other along tribal lines. For example, the Codeco supporting the Lendu tribe against the Hema tribe. But also, from a regional point of view, we've had, countries like Rwanda being accused by DRC of lending military support to the M23 rebels, one of about 120 rebel groups that operate within that region. Very rich, these areas, and, hence explains why there has been constant conflict. But Rwanda has often denied that it is directly supporting M23, even though the UN, the US, the EU has found evidence of that direct support, and they've called upon Rwanda to cease supporting this group. So this area is ravaged by, some kind of conflicts. Last week, I think a couple of days back, we saw clashes between tribes, people being killed. So DRC Congo has often, especially in its northern part, been very chaotic. And the UN has been accused of being very unable to deal with, restoring peace and security within this region. So there we have it. Internal and external conflicts are still ongoing.
Indeed, David, and you've already mentioned, the U.S., it's the latest accusation coming from U.S. of Rwanda, backing the M23 rebels, but Rwanda has constantly denied this. What do you think would be Rwanda's gain?
Well, first of all, Rwanda is a sovereign state. They would want to defend themselves against such accusations, because it's a reputational damage. If a country is seen to support a rebel group against another country, that could also be a declaration of war. So Rwanda would, do everything possible to deny these allegations, even though countries like the United States, the UN, and the EU, have directly found evidence of Rwanda's direct support. So for Rwanda, their gain is to deny these accusations. Their gain is to, if at all, maintain the relationship that they have with M23, perhaps to destabilize the region, and that gives them access to raw materials that come from that area. That would be their gain. But this is not the first country that the DRC Congo has accused.
Now, we've seen protests in the last few days, citizens, accusing the West and international community of silence over what is happening in the DRC. What role are they expecting, them to play, that the local troops, because we know the Southern African Development Community mission, that's the SAMI DRC, it has the SADC has a mission in the DRC with South African troops and, other countries having their troops on ground helping to fight these rebels. So what exactly are these people, looking for to, what are they expecting the international community to do? What role are they expecting them to play that SADC isn't already doing?
Well, I think for the past 2 decades, Layo, we've had peacekeeping missions being flown into the northern part of DRC. We still haven't seen any solutions. The UN has been accused of, being very unable to deal with the situation. I doubt if SADC is going to make any difference. Of course, we had, Kenya, of course, deploying its forces there, joint forces. That did not produce any results. I think, the solution is local. In my opinion, DRC has to, wear its seatbelts on and, find a local strategy to deal with these issues. But of course, there is a big role that the international community can play, especially with the accusations that Rwanda is sponsoring M23, of which Rwanda denies. So you need to have the international community present in that situation. They need to speak to the neighbors of DRC Congo. Congo has often accused its neighbors of, plundering its resources, including countries like Uganda. So it's not the first time. But, from a local point of view, I think, the Congolese need to find a solution to this problem. But of course, they need help.
My colleague Layo Olarinde with security expert David Otto. And there have been developments from the Junta in Guinea, which has dissolved the government and ordered security agencies to seal all of the country's borders until government ministries have been fully handed over to the Junta. The presidency's Secretary General, Brigadier General Amara Kamara, made the announcement through a presidential decree on state television, adding that the junta has frozen ministers' bank accounts and ordered them to surrender their passports and official vehicles. However, Mr. Kamara did not disclose a reason for the dissolution or say when a new government will be put in place. The junta seized power in a coup in September 2021. Colonel Doumbouya led Guinea's armed forces to overthrow elected President Alpha Condé after a series of protests over Mr. Condé's controversial bid for a third term. Guinea is expected to hold elections to return to democratic rule in 10 months, when the 24-month transition period set by the junta and by ECOWAS expires. The UN High Commission for Human Rights says legislative moves by the UK government to facilitate the prompt removal of asylum seekers to Rwanda run contrary to the basic principles of the rule of law and risk delivering a serious blow to human rights. Spokesperson Liz Throssell says governments cannot revoke their international human rights and asylum-related obligations by legislation. The Commission is now urging the UK government to take all necessary steps to ensure full compliance with the UK's international legal obligations. The Safety of Rwanda Bill requires every decision maker, be it a government minister, immigration officer or court or tribunal, reviewing asylum decisions conclusively to treat Rwanda as a safe country in terms of protecting refugees and asylum seekers against refoulement, irrespective of evidence that exists now or may exist in the future.
Settling questions of disputed fact, questions with enormous human rights consequences, is what courts do. And UK courts have a proven track record of doing this thoroughly and comprehensively. You can't legislate facts out of existence. The combined effects of this bill, attempting to shield government action from standard legal scrutiny, directly undercut basic human rights principles. Independent, effective judicial oversight is the bedrock of the rule of law. It must be respected and strengthened. Governments can't revoke their international human rights and asylum-related obligations by legislation. We urge the UK government to take all necessary steps to ensure full compliance with the UK's international legal obligations and to uphold the country's proud history of effective independent judicial scrutiny. Such a stance is today more vital than ever.
A prominent figure in Tunisia's opposition and a leader of the Ennahda party, Rachid Ghannouchi, has embarked on a hunger strike in solidarity with fellow anti-government activists. A move comes as a form of protest against the continued detention of opposition figures, as reported by a team of lawyers representing the opposition. The 82-year-old has been a vocal critic of President Kais Saied and his administration. Just last year, he was arrested on charges of incitement against police and alleged involvement in plots against state security. In a statement released by his legal team, Mr. Ghannouchi urged Tunisians to uphold democratic principles, emphasizing the importance of freedom and judicial independence. Despite his hunger strike, the team says he remains committed to advocating for a democratic Tunisia that is inclusive of all its citizens. And the head of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia, Katrina Lang, is lauding the country for the progress made in recent months in the implementation and completion of its security roadmap presented at the Somalia Security Conference in December last year. Ms. Lang also says Somalia is demonstrating that a country can emerge from prolonged conflict to one that delivers for its people and acts as a force for good in the region.
Through our collective support, Somalia is demonstrating that a country can emerge from prolonged conflict to one that delivers for its people and acts for a force for good in the region. The federal government of Somalia has made solid progress in recent months in the implementation of its priorities, including the completion of a critical security roadmap presented at the Somalia Security Conference on the 12th of December last year. Since my last briefing, Somalia has also gained admission to the East Africa Community, reached the completion point of the Heavily Indebted Poor Countries Initiative, secured the lifting of the arms embargo, and most recently secured the endorsement of the Africa Union Executive Council for a seat on the Security Council in 2025-26. These are very significant achievements.
We regret the recent political tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia following the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between Ethiopia and Somaliland. We echo the calls of the African Union Peace and Security Council and other key international partners, urging all partners to respect Somalia's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity.
While Somali government affirms its keenness to exercise the highest level of self-restraint, it reserves its full inherent right of self-defense to respond to threats stemming from violations on its territorial integrity and unity in accordance with the provisions of international law.
To South Africa now, the Diepsloot community is criticizing law enforcement officials for failing to keep promises they made to combat crime in the community. Just last month, 7 young black men were killed and burned to death. Following this, residents marched to the union buildings, urging President Cyril Ramaphosa to take action against widespread violent crime. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Samosa has more.
This is Diepsloot, north of Johannesburg. Crime is unfortunately a daily occurrence. In a stark critique of law enforcement's effort to combat crime, the Diepsloot community has voiced their disappointment, citing a failure to fulfill promises.
I think they must put more police, especially RTT. Police, they must come and stay in Diepsloot so that they must be visible. They must be visible on the communities. I'm so disappointed just because if they do the job, I won't be here right now talking with you.
The illegal immigrants are a problem in this area, but I think if the police can work hand in hand with a community, we can resolve this problem that we are facing at Diepsloot.
According to a representative from the Diepsloot Community Policing Forum, Mautla Muela says police are incapacitated to address community safety concerns.
Yeah, I think Diepsloot is an overpopulated area, that the manpower in Diepsloot police station, there are very few. So we need more manpower. If you can see, if there is a outcry, then they deploy some of the police from other areas, then the crime automatically goes down. But after those deployments, when they left, high rate of crime is just escalating like a wildfire.
In response to these concerns, police had this to say.
The Gauteng Provincial Joint Operations and Intelligence Structure, which is commonly known as the Prof Joints, resolved to heighten crime prevention by increasing police visibility through blue light patrols, static deployments of rapid response vehicles at identified strategic routes. So we believe that the visibility, it will discourage criminals from committing crime, but at the same time it will bring some comfort to the ordinary citizens of this country, knowing that we are in the street and ready to respond in case of emergency.
As tensions escalate and trust in law enforcement dwindles, residents of Diepsloot are left questioning the effectiveness of current crime-fighting efforts and calling for urgent action to address this situation. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
So how do you know you're important to someone? It's when they start giving you gifts. So what about gifts like a limousine? I guess it was one of the messages being passed across by President Vladimir Putin of Russia when he recently gifted his North Korean counterpart a luxury Russian-made car. According to state media in North Korea, the limousine was delivered to Mr. Kim's top aides on Sunday. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov later confirmed the gift, saying it was an Urus, a a full-size luxury sedan of the type used by Mr. Putin himself. Two internationally isolated countries have forged close relations since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. North Korea is thought to be supplying Russia with artillery, rockets and ballistic missiles for the war, despite international sanctions on both countries. Both sides deny breaching sanctions. Mr. Kim is believed to be a car enthusiast and to have a collection himself of luxury foreign vehicles. His sister says the gift serves as a clear demonstration of the special personal relations between the top leaders of the two countries. Guess we now know why. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Bye for now.